As Natasha mentioned, my name's Peta Christensen and I work with an organisation called Cultivating Community. Our work is around community food projects that support health and wellbeing for all. Most of you, I'm sure, recognise the public housing towers dotted around Melbourne's inner city neighbourhoods. There's one, if we just stand outside, we can see the Canning Street flats there. However, what you might not know is that below many of those towers are thriving community gardens where people from over 30 language groups are growing their own food. Cultivating Community supports 20 gardens like this across Melbourne. These gardens are some of the most productive growing spaces you'll find, with gardeners from countries including Vietnam, China, Turkey, Sudan, Afghanistan, El Salvador, Greece, Egypt and East Timor, to name a few. Our gardeners are making the most of every inch of their 2 metre by 2 metre plots. For our gardeners, these small plots of land provide not only somewhere to grow affordable fresh food, but also a place to be able to grow those special ingredients that make up your cultural cuisine that you can't buy at Coles or Woolies. Having a space to grow food is tied up in our sense of identity, culture and home. The gardens are also about coming together and being part of something in your community, meeting your neighbours and gathering around food. The mental health benefits are as significant as the physical benefits. I can't tell you how many times over the years people have expressed their deep love and connection for their garden and how their garden has literally saved their lives or saved their marriage. There are more of us living in cities across the world, and backyards are hard to come by. The opportunity to be able to grow your own food is getting harder and harder. Across Australia, the community garden movement has exploded over the last 15 years with all kinds of projects, big and small, sprouting wherever there's an available piece of land. A school, a nature strip, a laneway, a rooftop, a train station. It's a grassroots, ground-up kind of movement, but it's starting to take hold with the planners and policymakers as the myriad of outcomes become obvious, and we realise that everyone will need to get on board to build a resilient, human-friendly environment in the face of issues such as climate change and loneliness and food insecurity and diet-related diseases. I love this story of people power in the city of Yarra. A few years back, some neighbours had the idea to put a planter box out on the street to grow herbs and other veggies for everyone. There were lots of apartments in the area and very limited household growing spaces. The box was placed in a no standing zone so as not to put anybody trying to park their car offside. The idea soon spread, and over a period of 6 months or so, around 9 boxes had sprung up all over Fitzroy and North Fitzroy. At first the council wasn't too concerned, but after the 9th box popped up, they thought they'd better work out what its stance was about these boxes. So consultants were engaged to undertake a risk analysis, and whilst it was identified that you might run into the box on your bike or get stabbed by a syringe, the 60-strong mob of community members were able to present submissions to the council meeting outlining how the many benefits of the boxes outweighed the potential risks. As a result of these guerrilla gardens, there's now an urban agriculture officer at the City of Yarra, and you can officially apply for a permit to get a food growing box in your street. And so these people had they were the first permit getters, and that's the first official box. Those other boxes are still there as well, so that's good. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, around the same time, some local people in the town of Todmorden in England were concerned about health issues in their community and a lack of access to fresh food. They decided to just start planting food all over their town, and the idea caught on, gaining support from local businesses and services, so that a few years later there were food gardens outside the police station, the health centre, the cemetery, the shops, the school, the nature strips, the whole town, which led to incredible edible Todmorden being born. And these seeds have scattered far and wide, with over 700 community-led incredible edible groups all over the world. And there's incredible edible Eltham. I think there's also incredible edible Bendigo, and no doubt many others around Australia. Although it's true that access to land is limited in the city, there are indeed plenty of pockets and opportunities to create beautiful spaces for people to get their biophilia on and experience the peace, joy and connection that a food garden brings, as well as providing fresh food, especially for those whose access might be limited. Just having exposure to different food plants and being able to try them can provide a positive food experience and change the way we think about food. So imagine if we had food planted in our landscaping and gardens all over our neighbourhoods, brushing up against that food every day would certainly make us more aware of the process of growing food and hopefully in turn help us appreciate our food. Perhaps we'd be less inclined to waste it and throw it away. No doubt we'd love to have established food forests with enormous fig and apple trees for kids to climb and pick fruit planted all over the city in our parks and gardens, and hopefully we'll see more of that over the coming years. But there are many other spaces we can use more temporarily in the city to grow food. Another emerging trend that we see happening all over the world is using spaces to grow food for a short period of time, acknowledging that the city is an ever-changing, ever-evolving landscape that sometimes has vacant, to be developed in a few years kind of opportunities. And we're grasping these and planting them out with movable gardens that can then relocate when the time comes for building. Of course, something that a city has plenty of is rooftops, and we can utilise these spaces to grow food too. This is a beautiful example of a social enterprise in Copenhagen, where there's a rooftop market garden growing food for a veggie box scheme, as well as for their on-site cafe, which hosts community dinners, workshops and events. Local people have the opportunity to see where their food comes from, to know their farmers, all within walking distance of their city home. I'll pop this slide in from the Urban Orchard Garden in Perth to show an example of a more city-led approach to urban agriculture. This public garden is located in the heart of Perth City, right near the train station, and you can see how the food plants are incorporated effortlessly into the landscaping of the gardens. There are many passers-by and some who will stop and eat lunch and perhaps pick something fresh to enjoy. What's also essential to growing food in our city gardens is that it's done with the community. Food's really personal, and people need to feel connected with the space to enjoy it, to know its story, and to be part of it if they choose. Although this garden is managed by the city, it also has a group of volunteers who do monthly working bees and workshops, keeping the space animated and relevant. As we move towards further climate uncertainty and more urbanised communities, we need to ask ourselves, can growing food in the city actually feed us into the future? My final slide is of a project called the Agri-Hood in Detroit. Detroit was one of those American cities hit hard by the GFC. Its population plummeted to around 677,000, leaving many abandoned homes and in turn vacant lots. The Motor City has now become the urban ag city, as 1,400 food growing initiatives have sprung up to help revitalise and feed the city. We've seen the same thing happen in places like Cuba, and I hope we don't have to wait until things really turn to compost. Maybe it's time to get planting. Thanks.